Amy Collins wiped the sweat from her forehead as she looked at the clock on the wall. It was already 8 in the evening, and the grocery store was still busy. She had been working since noon, and her feet hurt from standing all day. But she needed this job to pay for college and help her family. The store was quiet now except for a few late shoppers. Amy was cleaning her checkout counter when she heard the automatic doors slide open. She looked up and saw someone walking in who made her stop and stare. The person was tall and moved with a strange grace. At first glance, he looked like an old man, but something was different. His skin had a slight shimmer to it, like tiny scales that caught the light. His eyes were golden, not brown or blue like most people. When he walked, other customers seemed to move out of his way without even thinking about it. Amy watched as he picked up a shopping basket and walked slowly through the store. He moved like he was not used to being in such a place. He stopped at different shelves and looked at items carefully before putting them in his basket. She could see him selecting expensive things. He picked up organic vegetables that cost twice as much as regular ones. He chose the best cuts of meat from the butcher section. He spent a long time in the spice area, picking up small jars that cost more than Amy spent on food in a week. Other customers whispered as they passed him. Some stared openly. Amy could see that the strange man noticed their looks, and it seemed to make him uncomfortable. His shoulders got tense, and he started moving faster through the aisles. After 20 minutes, he came to Amy's checkout line. She could see his basket was full of expensive items. When she started scanning his groceries, she tried to be friendly. "Good evening," she said with a smile. "Did you find everything you needed?" The man looked at her with those golden eyes. When he spoke, his voice was deep and had an accent she could not place. "Yes, thank you." "You are very kind." Amy kept scanning items. Organic chicken, premium olive oil, saffron that cost $40 for a tiny jar, imported cheese, fresh salmon, and many other expensive things. The total kept going up and up. "That will be $347. Amy said when she finished scanning everything. The man reached into his coat and pulled out what looked like a small leather pouch. From it, he took out several clear stones that sparkled in the light. They were beautiful, like diamonds, but different somehow. Amy stared at the stones. "I am sorry, but we can only take cash or cards," she said gently. The man looked confused. He held up the stones. "These are payment crystals from my world. They are worth much more than your paper money." Amy realized that this person was not from Earth. She had heard stories about aliens visiting, but she had never seen one before. She looked at the growing line behind him and saw people getting impatient. Some were whispering and pointing. The man saw this too. His face showed embarrassment, and Amy could tell he was upset. He started to put the stones back in his pouch. "I apologize. I do not understand your payment methods. I will leave these items here." Amy made a quick decision. She could not let this happen. The man seemed nice, and everyone deserved to be treated with respect no matter where they came from. "Wait," she said quickly. She pulled out her own credit card. "Let me pay for this." The man stared at her. "You would do this for a stranger? For someone who is clearly not of your kind?" Amy swiped her card before she could change her mind. She knew this would max out her credit limit, and she would have to eat cheap food for weeks, but it felt like the right thing to do. "Everyone deserves kindness," she said simply. "You can pay me back when you figure out how your crystals work with our system." The man did not speak for a long moment. He just looked at Amy with those strange golden eyes. She felt like he was seeing right into her soul, trying to understand who she was. "What is your name?" he asked finally. "Amy Collins." "Amy Collins," he repeated, like he was memorizing it. "I am called Korath. I have lived for many years and traveled to many worlds, but I have rarely met someone with such a pure heart." Amy felt her cheeks get warm. "It is not a big deal, really." But Korath shook his head. "It is a very big deal, Amy Collins. You have no idea how big." Amy bagged his groceries and handed them to him. "Just remember to be kind to someone else when you get the chance." Korath took the bags and bowed his head to her. It was a formal gesture that seemed important. "I will not forget this kindness, Amy Collins, and I will not forget you." He turned and walked toward the exit. Amy watched him go, noticing again how other people moved out of his way without thinking about it. At the door, he stopped and looked back at her one more time. Then he was gone. The next customer came up to Amy's counter and she went back to work. But she kept thinking about Korath and those golden eyes. There had been something ancient and powerful about him, like he was much more important than he appeared to be. When her shift ended at 10, Amy walked to her car thinking about the encounter. $347 was a lot of money for her. She would have to call her brother Jake and tell him she could not send money home this month. She would have to eat ramen noodles and peanut butter sandwiches until her next paycheck. But as she drove home to her small apartment, Amy did not regret her decision. She had helped someone who needed help. That was what mattered. She had no idea that her simple act of kindness would change her life forever. She had no idea that Korath was one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy, and she definitely had no idea that in just a few hours, 13 enormous spaceships would be heading toward Earth because of what she had done. Amy just went home, made herself a cup of tea and went to bed, thinking about golden eyes and crystal payment stones. Tomorrow would be another ordinary day, or so she thought. Amy woke up the next morning and looked at her bank account on her phone. The number made her stomach hurt. She had $32 left until her next paycheck in 5 days. She sighed and got dressed for her other job at the elementary school, where she worked as a substitute teacher. Before leaving her apartment, she called her younger brother Jake. He was a freshman at Oregon State University, and she usually sent him money for books and food. "Hey, big sister," Jake answered. "Please tell me you are calling with good news and money." "Sorry, Jake, I had to use my credit card for something important yesterday. I cannot send anything this week." "What happened? Did your car break down again?" Amy thought about how to explain. "I helped someone at the grocery store. He could not pay for his food, so I paid for him." Jake was quiet for a moment. "Amy, you are too nice for your own good. How much did you spend?" $347. "What?" "Amy, that is crazy. You do not have that kind of money to give away to strangers." He was not just any stranger, Jake. He was different. Special somehow, and he looked so embarrassed when his payment did not work. Different how? Amy tried to think of how to describe Korath without sounding insane. He had golden eyes and skin that looked like it had scales. I think he might have been from somewhere else. Like another country. Like another planet, Jake laughed. "Amy, you have been watching too many science fiction movies. There are no aliens shopping at your grocery store." After they hung up, Amy went to work. She spent the day teaching second graders about addition and subtraction. The children were sweet, and their innocence made her feel better about her empty bank account. Far away, on a space station called Nexus Prime, Korath was arriving at his small home. The station was huge, with millions of beings from hundreds of different worlds. Ships came and went constantly, bringing traders, diplomats, and travelers from across the galaxy. As Korath walked through the corridors with his grocery bags, other beings moved aside. They did not do this out of fear, but out of respect. A few nodded their heads as he passed. Some whispered to their companions, pointing at him. Korath did not notice. He was still thinking about the human girl who had helped him. In his 800 years of life, he had met countless beings. He had been a warrior, a leader, and a commander of the greatest fleet in known space. But he had never met anyone quite like Amy Collins. Most creatures approached him in one of three ways. They either feared him because of his reputation, respected him because of his power, or wanted something from him because of his wealth and connections. But Amy had simply seen someone who needed help, and had helped without asking for anything in return. When Korath reached his home, he put away his groceries and sat in his favorite chair. He thought about Amy's words. Everyone deserves kindness. Such a simple idea, but one that most beings in the galaxy had forgotten. Korath had retired from his position as Supreme Commander of the Draconic Imperial Fleet 5 years ago. He had grown tired of politics and war. He wanted peace and quiet, but now he felt something stirring in his old heart. Amy Collins had reminded him of something important about the universe. He walked to his communication console and activated it. The screen lit up with the symbol of the Draconic Empire. He entered a priority code that he had not used in years. Seconds later, a face appeared on the screen. It was Admiral Luna Rodriguez, his former second-in-command and now the leader of the 7th Dragon Wing. She looked surprised to see him. "Korath, it has been months since you contacted anyone. Is everything wrong?" "Luna, I need you to do something for me. Something important." Admiral Rodriguez straightened up. She had served under Korath for 50 years and knew that when he called something important, it usually was. "What do you need?" "I need a full background investigation on a human named Amy Collins. She lives on Earth, in a place called Portland. She works at a grocery store and teaches children." "A human? Korath, what is this about?" She showed me kindness when she had no reason to do so. Pure, selfless kindness. I want to know everything about her. Admiral Rodriguez frowned. That is unusual even for you. Why do you care about one human? Korath was quiet for a moment. Because in 8 centuries of life I have rarely met anyone with such a good heart. And because I think she might be in danger. Danger? What kind of danger? Beings with pure hearts are rare, Luna. There are those in the galaxy who would pay great sums to own such a person. I want her protected. Admiral Rodriguez nodded. I will assign my best intelligence team to investigate her, and I will put a protection detail on standby. Use Captain Ben Murphy and Lieutenant Sophie Hayes for the investigation. They are thorough and discreet. Consider it done. Korath, are you sure about this? You never get involved in individual cases anymore. I am sure. And Luna, if the investigation shows what I think it will show, I may have a job offer for Miss Collins. A very important job. What kind of job? The kind that could change the relationship between humanity and the rest of the galaxy. Admiral Rodriguez had worked with Korath long enough to know when he was being serious. I will start the investigation immediately. We will have a complete report within 24 hours. Thank you, Luna, and remember, this is priority classified. Tell no one except Murphy and Hayes. After ending the call, Korath sat back in his chair. He thought about Amy Collins working her 2 jobs, helping her family, and living paycheck to paycheck. She had no idea that her simple act of kindness had just set in motion events that would reach across the galaxy. Meanwhile, back on Earth, Amy was finishing her day at the elementary school. She helped clean up the classroom and said goodbye to the other teachers. As she walked to her car, she thought about what to make for dinner. With her limited budget, it would probably be pasta again. She had no idea that at that very moment, the 2 best intelligence officers in the Draconic Fleet were beginning an investigation into every aspect of her life. She did not know that within hours, they would discover not only her history of kindness but also a threat to her safety that she knew nothing about. Amy drove home through the busy streets of Portland, thinking about her strange customer from the night before. She wondered if she would ever see Korath again, and if he would ever figure out how to convert his crystal payments into Earth money. She smiled at the memory of his golden eyes and formal way of speaking. Jake was probably right that she was too trusting, but she could not help herself. Helping others just felt like the right thing to do. Little did Amy know that this attitude would soon make her the most important human in the galaxy. Admiral Luna Rodriguez stood in her command center aboard the flagship Dragon's Honor. She had received Korath's request 12 hours ago, and now she was reading the preliminary report from her investigation team. What she found made her understand why the old commander was so interested in this human. Captain Ben Murphy and Lieutenant Sophie Hayes had worked through the night to gather information about Amy Collins. Their report painted a picture of someone truly unusual in the galaxy. Admiral, Captain Murphy said as he entered her office, you need to see the complete file on Amy Collins. This is not an ordinary human. Admiral Rodriguez gestured for him to sit down. Tell me what you found. Where do I start? Amy Collins, age 23, born in Portland, Oregon. Parents died in a car accident when she was 18. She has been taking care of herself and supporting her younger brother ever since. Lieutenant Hayes joined them, carrying a data tablet. The interesting part is not what she does for work, but what she does in her free time. She volunteers at the animal shelter every weekend. She tutored struggling students for free all through college. She sends money to her elderly grandmother every month, even when she can barely afford it herself. Murphy nodded. Last month she used her last $50 to buy food for a homeless man she met outside her apartment building. She then ate nothing but peanut butter sandwiches for a week until her next paycheck. 2 months ago, Hayes continued, she found a lost child in the park and spent 4 hours helping the police find the parents. She missed work and lost pay, but she stayed until the child was safe. Admiral Rodriguez looked through the files. This level of consistent selflessness is extremely rare. Most beings show kindness when it is convenient, or when they want something in return. But this human helps others even when it hurts her financially. There is more, Murphy said. We hacked into the grocery store's security system and watched the encounter with Commander Korath. She did not hesitate to help him even though he was clearly not human, and other customers were staring and whispering. Hayes pulled up a video on her tablet. Look at her face when she makes the decision to pay. There is no calculation, no thought about what she might get in return. She just sees someone who needs help and helps. Admiral Rodriguez watched the video carefully. She could see why Korath had been so impressed. In a galaxy full of beings who acted only for personal gain, Amy Collins seemed to act purely from compassion. "What about her background check?" the Admiral asked. "Any criminal history? Any connections to dangerous groups?" "Completely clean," Murphy replied. "Never been arrested, never even gotten a speeding ticket. Her credit score is low because she keeps helping other people with her money, not because she is irresponsible." "Her employers love her," Hayes added. "The grocery store manager says she is the most reliable worker he has ever had. The school principal says children adore her because she genuinely cares about them." Admiral Rodriguez was impressed, but something in Murphy's expression told her there was more. "What else did you find, Captain?" Murphy's face grew serious. "We found a problem, Admiral. A big one." He activated a holographic display showing surveillance photos and data files. "While investigating Amy Collins, we discovered that someone else has been watching her too. A human criminal organization led by a man named Marcus Webb." Hayes leaned forward. "Webb runs a trafficking operation that specializes in selling humans to off-world buyers. But not just any humans. They target what they call pure hearts, humans with exceptional compassion and kindness. These pure-hearted humans are sold as personal companions, servants, or worse, to wealthy beings across the galaxy," Murphy continued. "They bring extremely high prices because genuine kindness is so rare." Admiral Rodriguez felt her blood run cold. "And they have targeted Amy Collins?" "Yes, ma'am. They have been watching her for 3 weeks. They know her schedule, her routines, where she lives and works. According to our intelligence, they plan to kidnap her within the next 48 hours. Hayes brought up more files. Webb's organization has already sold 12 humans in the past year. Most were never seen again. The few who escaped described horrible conditions on alien worlds where they were treated as property. "Why haven't Earth's authorities stopped this?" the Admiral asked. "Earth's government does not know it is happening," Murphy explained. "The victims simply disappear. Their families think they left town or ran away. Webb's organization is very careful to target people who would not be immediately missed. But Amy Collins has family," Hayes pointed out. "Her brother Jake would definitely report her missing. That makes her a riskier target, but they are willing to take the chance because of her exceptional profile." Admiral Rodriguez stood up and paced around her office. This changed everything. Korath had asked her to investigate and protect Amy Collins, but now she realized the protection was urgently needed. "How many ships does Webb have?" she asked. 3 small transport vessels," Murphy replied. "Fast and equipped with stealth technology, but no real weapons. They rely on surprise and stealth, not force." "And how many people are in his organization?" 15 active members on Earth, plus crews for the ships. Maybe 30 people total." Admiral Rodriguez made a decision. "Send a message to the 7th Dragon Wing. I want 3 ships to Earth immediately, but they should remain cloaked and out of detection range. Deploy special operations teams to monitor Webb's organization." "Yes, ma'am," both officers replied. "Also, send a priority message to Commander Korath. Tell him his instincts were correct and that Amy Collins is indeed in danger. Ask him what level of intervention he authorizes." Hayes looked curious. "Admiral, forgive me for asking, but why is Commander Korath so interested in this one human? He has never gotten involved in individual cases before." Admiral Rodriguez thought about how to answer. "Lieutenant, in all the years I served under Korath, I learned that he has an ability to see the true nature of beings. If he says Amy Collins is special, then she is special. And if he wants her protected, then we will protect her." Murphy nodded. "What about the trafficking organization? Do we take them down?" "We wait for Korath's response first. This is his operation now. But prepare arrest teams just in case. I want Webb and all his people captured, not killed. They will have valuable information about off-world trafficking networks." As her officers left to carry out their orders, Admiral Rodriguez looked out at the stars. In her 30 years of military service, she had dealt with wars, diplomatic crises, and space pirates. But she had never been involved in protecting one individual human, because they showed kindness to her former commander. She thought about Amy Collins, working her 2 jobs and struggling to pay her bills, completely unaware that alien criminals were planning to kidnap her, and that the most powerful military force in the galaxy was now mobilizing to protect her. Within 6 hours, 3 Dragon Wing ships were moving toward Earth at maximum speed. Special operations teams were preparing for deployment. Intelligence officers were tracking every member of Webb's organization, and on Earth, Amy Collins finished her shift at the grocery store and drove home, thinking about whether she had enough money left to buy milk. She unlocked her apartment door and made herself a simple dinner, completely unaware that her simple act of kindness had just triggered the largest protection operation in draconic military history. Outside her window, the stars looked the same as always. But among those stars, powerful forces were moving to ensure that her kindness would not be punished by those who would exploit it. Amy was sitting at her small kitchen table, grading math tests from her substitute teaching job, when the ground began to shake. At first, she thought it might be an earthquake. Portland did not get many earthquakes, but they happened sometimes. She put down her red pen and waited for the shaking to stop, but it did not stop. Instead, it got stronger. The windows in her apartment started to rattle. The dishes in her cabinets made clinking sounds. Amy stood up and looked outside, wondering what was happening. What she saw made her drop her pen and stare with her mouth open. Huge dark shapes were descending from the clouds above Portland. They were not planes or helicopters. They were enormous, each one the size of several city blocks. They moved silently through the air, casting giant shadows over the buildings below. Amy counted them as they came into view. 1, 2, 3, 4. She kept counting. 10, 11, 12, 13. 13 massive spacecraft were hovering over her city. The ships were beautiful in a terrifying way. They had sleek, dark hulls that seemed to absorb light. Golden symbols decorated their sides, symbols that looked like dragons. They hung in the air without making any sound, defying everything Amy knew about physics. Outside, she could hear car alarms going off. People were screaming and running in the streets. Some were taking pictures with their phones. Others were getting in their cars and trying to drive away. But the roads were quickly becoming jammed with traffic. Amy's phone started ringing. It was Jake. Amy, are you seeing this? Are you okay? There are alien ships over Portland. I can see them from my window, Amy said, her voice shaking. Jake, I think they might be real. Of course they are real. They are on every news channel. The president is about to make an emergency speech. Amy, you need to get out of there. But Amy could not stop staring at the ships. Something about them seemed familiar, though she could not figure out what. The golden dragon symbols reminded her of something, but she could not remember what. On the street below, news vans were arriving. Reporters were setting up cameras and broadcasting live to the world. Police cars and military vehicles were racing through the streets with their sirens blaring. Amy could see people pointing up at the ships and talking excitedly or fearfully. The ships just floated there, silent and still. They did not attack or make any threatening moves. They did not respond to radio signals from the government or military. They just waited. After 20 minutes of hovering, something changed. One of the ships, the largest one in the center of the formation, opened a bay door on its underside. A much smaller craft emerged and began descending toward the ground. Amy watched as the smaller ship headed directly toward her neighborhood. It was coming straight for her apartment building. She felt her heart start to race. Why would they come here? What could they possibly want with her? The small craft landed in the parking lot of Amy's apartment complex with a soft thud that shook the building. Amy could see it clearly from her third-floor window. It was sleek and silver, about the size of a large van. Strange symbols glowed along its sides. People in the neighboring buildings were pressed against their windows watching. Cars had stopped in the street. Everyone was staring at the alien craft that had landed right in the middle of their quiet neighborhood. A door on the side of the craft opened with a hissing sound. Bright light spilled out, making it hard to see inside. Then figures began emerging. The first one out was clearly the leader. She was tall and wore what looked like a military uniform with many medals and decorations. Her skin had the same slight shimmer that Amy remembered from the grocery store customer, and her eyes were golden like his. Behind her came 6 more figures in matching armor. They looked like warriors or guards. Each one carried weapons that Amy did not recognize, but they held them in a way that suggested they were not planning to use them. The leader looked up at Amy's building and said something to one of her companions. Even from 3 floors up, Amy could hear their voices had that same strange accent she remembered from Korath. Then the leader spoke in a loud, clear voice that carried across the parking lot. Her words were translated by some kind of device so Amy could understand them. "We seek Amy Collins. We come in peace, bearing a message from Korith the Ancient. Amy Collins, please come down so we may speak with you. Amy felt her legs go weak. Every person in every building around the parking lot was now looking up at her apartment. She could see faces in windows, people on balconies, news cameras pointing in her direction. Everyone was staring at her building, waiting to see what would happen. Her phone rang again. It was her neighbor from across the hall. Amy. Amy, they are asking for you. The aliens are asking for you by name. What did you do? Amy could not answer. She was thinking about the old man from the grocery store, Korith. He had said his name was Korith, and now someone calling themselves Korith the Ancient had sent a fleet of spaceships to find her. She looked down at the leader in the parking lot. The woman was looking directly at her window now as if she knew exactly where Amy was. She spoke again, her translated words reaching Amy clearly. Miss Collins, we know you are here. Please do not be afraid. We are here to thank you for your kindness to Commander Korith and to discuss a matter of great importance. Will you please come down and speak with us? Commander Korith. The old man from the grocery store was a commander. That explained the way other people had moved aside for him, the formal way he spoke, and those strange payment crystals. Amy realized she had two choices. She could hide in her apartment and hope they would go away, or she could go down and find out what they wanted. But she knew hiding was not really an option. They had come specifically for her, flying across space with 13 enormous ships. They were not going to leave without talking to her. She took a deep breath and called down from her window. I am Amy Collins. Give me a few minutes to come down. The leader nodded and said something to her guards. They formed a protective circle around the landing area, but their weapons remained lowered. They were clearly waiting for her. Amy looked around her small apartment. Everything looked the same as it had an hour ago, but she knew her life was about to change forever. The simple act of paying for an old man's groceries had somehow brought 13 alien warships to her home. She put on her shoes and grabbed her keys. Her hands were shaking as she walked toward the door. She had no idea what these aliens wanted from her, but she was about to find out. As she walked down the stairs of her apartment building, Amy thought about Korith's golden eyes and his formal way of thanking her. She remembered his words. I will not forget this kindness, Amy Collins, and I will not forget you. Apparently, he had not forgotten, and apparently, his gratitude was much bigger than she had ever imagined possible. Amy walked slowly down the stairs of her apartment building, her heart pounding with each step. Through the glass doors at the entrance, she could see the alien leader waiting for her with her guards. News cameras were pointed at the building from across the street. Police had set up barriers to keep crowds back, but Amy could see hundreds of people watching. She pushed open the door and stepped outside. The leader approached her with measured steps. Up close, Amy could see that she was indeed similar to Korith, with the same golden eyes and shimmering skin. But where Korith had seemed old and tired, this woman radiated power and authority. Miss Collins, the leader said, her voice carrying clearly through the translation device. I am Admiral Luna Rodriguez of the Draconic Imperial Fleet. Thank you for agreeing to speak with us. Amy tried to speak but found her mouth was too dry. She cleared her throat and tried again. You said you have a message from Korith. Indeed. But perhaps we should speak somewhere more private. May we come to your apartment? Amy looked around at all the watching eyes and cameras. Yes, that would be better. Admiral Rodriguez gestured to her guards and they formed a protective formation around Amy as they walked back into the building. Amy noticed that people in the crowd pressed closer to the barriers, trying to hear what was being said. Reporters were shouting questions, but the guards ignored them completely. In the elevator, Admiral Rodriguez spoke quietly. Miss Collins, what I am about to tell you will be difficult to believe. Commander Korith is not just any dragon. He is one of the most important beings in our empire. Commander? Amy asked. At the grocery store, he seemed so ordinary. Just an old man who needed help. That is exactly why your actions meant so much to him. When they reached Amy's apartment, the Admiral looked around at the small space with interest. Amy felt embarrassed by her tiny kitchen, the second-hand furniture, and the stack of unpaid bills on her counter. Please sit down, Amy said, gesturing to her couch. Can I get you something to drink? I have water and tea. Admiral Rodriguez smiled. Water would be fine, thank you. As Amy poured water into glasses, the Admiral continued talking. Miss Collins, Commander Korath was the supreme commander of the Draconic Imperial Fleet for over 3 centuries. He led our military forces, negotiated peace treaties, and was one of the most respected leaders in known space. Amy nearly dropped the glass she was holding. 3 centuries? How old is he? Over 800 years old. He retired 5 years ago to live quietly on a trade station. But yesterday he contacted me with an urgent request. He wanted us to investigate you and protect you. Protect me? From what? Admiral Rodriguez's expression grew serious. From humans who would exploit your kindness. Miss Collins, there are criminals who kidnap compassionate people and sell them to wealthy beings across the galaxy. They had been watching you and planned to take you within days. Amy felt the room spin. What? That is impossible. I'm afraid it is very possible. We arrested the entire organization 6 hours ago. Their leader, Marcus Webb, had detailed files on you. They knew your schedule, your habits, everything. The Admiral pulled out a small device and showed Amy photos of men she did not recognize. These people had been following you for weeks, waiting for the right moment to strike. Amy sat down heavily on her couch. But why me? I am nobody special. That is where you are wrong, Miss Collins. What you did for Commander Korath, paying for his groceries without expecting anything in return, showed a level of pure compassion that is extremely rare in the galaxy. Most beings help others only when they want something back. You helped simply because it was the right thing to do. Amy thought about this. It did not seem like a big deal at the time. To you, perhaps. But to Commander Korath, it was proof that genuine goodness still exists in the universe. In his 8 centuries of life, dealing with politicians and warriors and diplomats, he had almost forgotten that some beings act purely from kindness. Admiral Rodriguez set down her water glass and leaned forward. Miss Collins, Commander Korath has made a proposal. He wants to offer you a position that has never existed before. What kind of position? Cultural ambassador between humanity and the Draconic Empire. You would travel with our diplomatic teams, helping to build relationships between our peoples and other species we encounter. Amy stared at her. But I am just a grocery store clerk and substitute teacher. I do not know anything about diplomacy or space travel. You know the most important thing, the Admiral replied. You know how to treat others with respect and compassion, regardless of what they look like or where they come from. Most of our diplomats approach other species with either fear or calculated self-interest. You approach everyone with genuine kindness. What would this job involve? Admiral Rodriguez smiled. You would live aboard one of our ships and travel to different worlds. When we meet new species or negotiate with existing ones, you would be there to help them understand that not all beings are motivated by power or profit. Some, like you, are motivated by simple human decency. Amy felt overwhelmed. I would have to leave Earth? Leave my brother and my grandmother? The salary would be more than enough to support your family. Your brother could finish college without financial worries. Your grandmother could have the best medical care available. And you would be doing something truly important, helping to build bridges between different worlds. Amy walked to her window and looked out at the 13 massive ships floating silently above Portland. A few hours ago, her biggest worry had been whether she could afford to buy groceries this week. Now she was being offered a job that would take her to the stars. Why do you think I could do this? She asked. What makes you so sure? Because of what you did for Commander Korath. You saw an old man who needed help, and you helped him without asking questions or expecting rewards. That is exactly the attitude we need when dealing with new species. Most beings approach first contact with suspicion or greed. You approach everyone with open hands and an open heart. Amy thought about her life on Earth. Her 2 jobs barely paid her bills. She lived paycheck to paycheck, always worrying about money. She loved helping the children at the elementary school, but she was only a substitute teacher with no job security. What about the people who were watching me? The criminals? All captured. Their off-world contacts have been notified that Earth is now under draconic protection. No one will bother you again. Amy turned back to face the Admiral. If I said yes to this job, when would I have to leave? Commander Korath is eager to begin this cultural exchange program, but the decision is entirely yours. You could leave with us today, or you could take time to think about it and arrange your affairs on Earth first. Amy looked around her tiny apartment again. She thought about her brother Jake, struggling with college expenses. She thought about her grandmother, who needed medication she could barely afford. She thought about all the children she had taught, and how she always wished she could do more to help them. Then she thought about Korath's golden eyes and his surprise at her simple act of kindness. If beings like him existed throughout the galaxy, maybe she really could help build understanding between different worlds. "Admiral Rodriguez," Amy said finally, "if I take this job, will I be able to come back to Earth to visit?" "Of course. Earth would remain your home base. You would travel on diplomatic missions, but you could return as often as you like." Amy made her decision. "Then I accept. I want to help build bridges between worlds, just like I tried to build a bridge with Commander Korath in the grocery store." Admiral Rodriguez smiled widely. "Commander Korath will be very pleased. He said you had the heart of a true diplomat." As Amy began to pack her few belongings, she realized that her simple act of kindness had not just changed her own life. It had opened a new chapter in the relationship between humanity and the rest of the galaxy. She looked out at the 13 ships one more time. Soon she would be aboard one of them, traveling to worlds she had never imagined, meeting beings she had never dreamed existed, all because she had chosen to be kind to a stranger. Amy smiled as she folded her clothes into a suitcase. Sometimes the smallest acts of kindness really did create the biggest changes in the universe, and sometimes paying for an old dragon's groceries could lead to a job among the stars. The girl who had worried about $32 in her bank account was about to become Earth's first ambassador to the galaxy, proving that compassion truly was the most powerful force in the universe.